Let's do that now. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're moving on to our third unit. Now, I'm quite conscious that I'm still waiting for bits of work from a lot of people, mostly for Unit 27. People are just sort of finishing that up. But there's not really, we're kind of at a point where some people have finished or virtually finished, and some people have got quite a lot of catching up to do. Now, we've kind of covered enough enough time in sessions to kind of mean that any work that's outstanding now needs to be kind of done in your own time. So I think the people that are in the group are pretty well on it. I understand some people are catching up a little bit, but that's no huge problem as long as we don't get too far behind. So let's crack on, and we can sort of make a plan for today. So this slide just shows the units where we are. So we hopefully hopefully everyone's done 26. Now I've only got 3 people who have sent me, I can show it, 3 people who have sent me their completed work in the envelopes. Now I do need these, so please, if you have work from Unit 26 knocking about, pop it in an envelope and send it to me. Unit 27, as I said, most people have finished. Some people are just getting there. And so today we're going to start on this Unit 55, developing your CV. Now, the reason I'm doing it whilst some people are just finishing as off 27 is we almost kind of have to go back and review your first CV again. So I'll sort of talk you through it, but it fits in quite nicely now, and it should be a quick win. So we can kind of theoretically get it finished possibly by the end of the week, actually. So that would be quite nice for us to kind of get back on track. So so that's your situation. There's then going to be 2 more units for this course, which are successor interview and preparing for a work placement. So the successor interview just asks you to, we kind of do a mock interview. So I sort of, I guess I'll have to do it over Skype or Zoom. And we discuss your sort of suitability for a role. And then lastly, we start this unit, which is preparation for your workplace. So obviously your work placements, we still envisage them going ahead, but we can't really at the minute give a kind of a start date. So it would be nice if we could get this all kind of tied up in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, that would make me really happy. We could then sort of start getting back to the gym instructor stuff, and also sort of get onto a bit of the sort of maths and English stuff. So so we're on 55 now. That's our first session of what will probably only be this week. It may sort of tip into next week depending on how quickly we go. So you should now have completed Unit 26 and sent it to me. You should have completed 27 and sent your applications, but I'm aware that some people have started at different points, so a few people are catching up. So I won't be too worried, but I would say we need to start, really focusing on that, getting that in. So what today's task is going to be, I'll summarize it and then show you where it kind of fits in. I've sent you all these notes, so you've all got you'll have received an email earlier which has the PDF of these notes. So when I go through them, if you miss anything, you have the document, so you can go back, or you can talk to me on chat box. So just as a quick summary, so you are preparing for a recorded professional discussion later in the week related to your CV. So you have all, or well, a few people, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people have sent me CVs. So this is their draft CV. So what what we're going to do, I've given those people feedback, and they should now be acting upon that feedback. So reviewing the CV. In the background, my colleague is also doing the same thing with your CV. So you'll get a sort of double layer of feedback. What we need to do at the end of this week, we could possibly squeeze it in on Thursday and Friday, is we have a discussion about the changes that were, or about the feedback that I've given to your first CV. So that first one you gave me, your rough draft. So I've given you a written feedback. Joe will also give you a little bit of feedback on your CV, and then we discuss that feedback and we discuss the changes that are to be made. That is your assessment, that discussion. But in order for it to be accessible, you need to prepare some notes. So your first task is to review the feedback you've received and make notes. And I need to see those notes before we have our discussion. So essentially today's task is about creating a set of notes for yourself that you use to kind of support yourself during our discussion. The second part, and actually I've kind of included it on the same page, is that you need to show the changes that were or are needed to your original CV, or that were needed to your original CV. So that's the sort of an overview of what you're going to do today. It should be a relatively simple task. But it does form the basis of a discussion where I will kind of grill you a bit on these CVs. And finally, you're asked to discuss this feedback. So that will be what we do on probably Thursday or Friday, but we've got a very small number, so we might be able to sort of blast through it a little bit earlier. So where it fits into this unit is, I'll sort of annotate this so you can see. So what we're doing is this first part. You're summarizing feedback received on CV from 2 professionals. Now, I'm only one professional, but I want you to begin your notes on my feedback, and then when Joe gives hers, you just add that feedback in. It may not be much more, actually. So you're also today going to prepare your notes for our discussion about 1.2 as well, which is outlining the changes that needed to be made or need to be made to that first draft CV that you gave me. There's a third sort of worksheet connected to it, which you will do eventually, but there's no rush for that today. So we're working towards those 2 bits today, 1.1 and 1.2. Now, if you look at the rest of this unit, it's all pretty much stuff that you've been doing for the previous unit. So there shouldn't be too much extra work. That's why I think this is quite a quickie. So hopefully we can get it done nice and sharply. So let me just clear that off. Okay. So what I'm going to get you to do now, I've sent, I'm just trying to check who I've got. I've got in this room, as it were, I've got Caden. Now, I've not received your CV, so this is going to be difficult for you at the minute unless you can get me your CV quickly, or I've got it hidden somewhere and I can do my feedback quickly. Jace, I've just sent you some feedback on your CV. Kayla, we've been discussing your CV, and Kai, I don't think I've had your CV yet either. So perhaps Caden and Kai, I'll go through this. but if you can get me your CV sharpish, even a draft one, then I can do your feedback in this session, and you can get on with it. So let me just go through this quickly, get everyone set up, and then we'll sort of discuss where you guys are. Okay, so that first point, that 1.1, you're going to summarize feedback on your initial CV. So effectively, essentially the task is that you submit a CV, so which most of you have done. You've given me a draft CV or a kind of an early stage CV. And then I've given you a brief bit of feedback. Now, what I want you to do is summarize the feedback you've been given, also possibly looking at your CV a bit more critically yourself and thinking about how you would change any of these aspects too. So what I need you all to do is, do you see my sheet I've created on that right hand side? So it's got name at the top, unit 55, professional discussion notes for 1.1 and 1.2, and then I've got all those little headings. So what I'd like you to do in a second is for you to just work your way down and just get yourself a fresh sheet of paper, or it could fit over two sides. I don't really mind, but I need your name at the top. I need the title that there's professional discussion notes, and I need headings for style, content, length, suitability, and changes to make. So can I just get you all to do that very quickly? Just get yourself a fresh sheet of paper and do that for me straight away. Okay, thank you for that. I'll just pause the recording for a second. Let's press on. So hopefully now you've got a nice sheet that shows you the basis of your discussion. So remember, these are your discussion notes, and really what we'll do is I just sort of say, okay, what was the feedback on your initial CV, and you can just sort of just work through your notes as we discuss. So we'll now start filling it up. I'm going to go through this fairly quick, and then I'm going to ask you to go back and complete your notes. So as I said, you have these notes on a PDF, so I'll go through it, and then I'll pause the kind of presentation, and then if you have any questions, then I think it's probably best to do them after I've gone through it. So so you've got your basis now. So imagine we are preparing for our discussion. Now, you have a section for style. So in the feedback I've given, I think I've got a section on presentation. I've also got a general comments section. So if I sort of haven't commented on style sort of uniquely, you could probably assume that it's all right, that your style is good. So in that case, just say no feedback necessary, or no improvement necessary. But if there's anything that you think, having looked at your CV again, if there's any blanks that you think, actually, do you know what, it could be more professional, then add in your own notes. Just pop in things that you think of. So what I want you to consider, or put in this section, is, was the style done using an appropriate CV template? A lot of you have sent CVs to me that you might previously have done elsewhere. That's fine, but I did give options of CV templates. So there was a very specific school leaver one, there was a career changer one, there was someone moving in the same industry. So sometimes I've sort of mentioned that it might be useful to use a school leaver one, particularly if you haven't got a lot of work experience that you can discuss. So for some of you, that will be a thing that was mentioned. I may have mentioned if the style suited the industry. Most people I didn't. Most of you were pretty appropriate with the style of CVs that you've done. Was the font used appropriate? Again, most of you had pretty good sort of fonts on your CVs. It wasn't anything sort of wild and wacky. Some of you had odd areas of underlining, odd areas in bold, strange colors sort of floating around. And I have commented on some of those. So in your style section, just sort of have a review of the feedback I've given you so far, and just note if there's anything that you were advised regarding any of those kind of elements. So under content, we'll discuss the feedback you had related to the content of your CV. There was probably a little bit more I mentioned, particularly were there any spelling mistakes. Were words and phrases spelt correctly? Were there any changes needed to grammar or phrasing? So some of you, particularly in the initial personal statements, some of those I just suggested a little bit of alteration. And also any other errors, just general errors that I've noticed, you know, just sort of capital letters here and there. Any other sort of phrasing that you maybe can't back up. Any sort of, you know, so I just want you to review the feedback you've related to the content of your CV, and put in anything that you were advised to change there. Under your length heading, so ideally your CV should fit neatly onto 2 pages. So most people, again, were pretty good. What sometimes looks not amazing is if you've got, say, 2 pages, one's completely full and the other one's got a kind of, you know, top line completed. So it's useful to get your formatting as perfect as you can, so it really sort of does fit onto those 2 pages as well as you possibly can. Some people, I've mentioned there were areas that were too long, so I want you to note if you got feedback related to the length of any areas. That should say too short, that second one. So were any areas too short? So some of you have, particularly those people who have come straight from school, you just sort of listed the GCSEs, when it might be useful to kind of explain in more depth the skills that you got from your school, whether you got involved in any additional clubs. A lot of you seem to have done some sort of kind of charity work, which is great, which is really nice to see. So did you get any feedback on areas being too long or too short? And then lastly, just the general suitability of the CV. So was the CV suitable for the industry that you're applying for? And did it present a professional view of you as a candidate? So those are the sort of big 4 categories that we'll discuss in our discussion. So have a look through the feedback you've got from your CV, and see what feedback you've got related to each of these. They won't be, you know, headed suitability. They won't be headed length, but you need to work through that CV and think, actually, what was really said. So your job then now is I'm going to get you to start preparing your notes. So you should have that nice sheet like I've got on the left-hand side. And what I'd like you to do is to begin by creating your page of notes for our professional discussion by reviewing the CV feedback that I've given you already, and listing that feedback under style, content, length, suitability, and then at the bottom, noting the changes that you either need to make now or that you were required to make. So that's as simple as it is. These are your notes, so they don't have to be huge, but they are things that we will discuss. If there's any huge glaring gaps, again, review your own CV and see if there's anything you can think of for adding. But also you can just contact me on the chat box and I'll go over your CV again quickly whilst I'm here and give you a couple of ideas about what you can add in. Okay. So if there's no questions, I'm going to let you work on that for 20 minutes. So I'm going to just set a timer. I suggest you do two, and then we'll kind of regroup in 20 minutes time, when you should have begun to get a good page of feedback notes. Those people that haven't given me their CV yet, you need to spend this time rustling up a CV for me to look at quickly. Okay, so everyone all right with that? Everyone happy? I will start my timer, and then we'll check in 20 minutes time. Okay, go. Okay, so the task is this. So what you're putting together for me is related to Unit 55. So we're working on the first task of Unit 55, and this is to tie in with the stuff that you've just done for 26 or 27, sorry. So we're just working today on parts 1.1 and 1.2. So what you're doing here is you're summarizing feedback you've got on your CV, and then just outlining changes that are to be made. So this is from the first submission of your CV that you've given. The feedback that I gave you is really what you're summarizing. So it's a strange old task, but not too demanding. So the evidence that you'll be presenting is some notes for a discussion that we have, and a discussion that we have at the end of the week. So that's all that's happening. I will show you the tasks that we need to do. So on the right hand side of this screen, I've got the notes sheet that I wanted you to create, or you created earlier. So on the top left, you just pop your name. On the right hand side, you just pop the unit, which is 55. And then just to give it a title, which is Professional Discussion Notes for 1.1 and 1.2. You've then got 5 headings that you're gonna fill in, really. So you've got style, content, length, suitability, and then the changes to make. So this is all summarizing the feedback you were given regarding your first CV submission. So the stuff that I fed back to you from. So you sent me your draft or your first CV, and I gave you some feedback. So under each of those headings, you need to just make notes for our discussion. So we'll sort of connect via Zoom, and we'll just talk through the various aspects of your CV, and you'll just sort of tell me what was said and what was your kind of interpretation of it. So under each of these underneath these subjects, I kind of really want you to be considering these following topics. So let's take style, for example. I will have fed back, and in my writing, I might have sort of said, actually, there's areas where it's not particularly professional. Maybe some of the presentation could have been improved. So under style, I may have commented on the things on the left-hand side here. So you say, was the style using an appropriate CV template? As I said earlier, a lot of people had sort of CVs that they'd come with that they'd created elsewhere. And I was trying to get you to use one of the 3 templates that I gave in class. So did the style suit the industry you were applying for? Well, most people were pretty good, so I didn't give an awful lot of feedback on that. Was the font used appropriate? And did you have to change any areas of underlining, bold type, or anything else? So, was there anything just in terms of the general style of that CV that was changed or recommended to change? Under content, I gave a lot of feedback on the sort of terminology that people were using. Sometimes it was not too business-like, and I've made suggestions regarding the content in that sense. I've also made suggestions on spelling mistakes. So you're just basically saying what feedback was given regarding the content. So spelling mistakes, were there any changes to grammar or the phrasing that you've used that were recommended? And were there any other
errors that were outlined. Under length, so there might be, just in terms of the order of the CV, does it fit neatly into 2 pages? So so I will have commented on that. This is where my own typo is. So were any areas too long? So some people had really long-winded personal statements that was not very focused. Some people had really long-winded interests that were really not particularly business-like, and then some people had really areas that were really short. So the work experience, people weren't really discussing what skills they gained, what they were involved with, what they gained from that work experience at all. So here you're just putting where any area is too long and also where any area is too short. Particularly, most people were too short on the skills that they're gaining from their work experience. And then there's a section where you comment on the suitability of your CV. So what feedback have I given on the suitability of your CV? So was it suitable for the industry or the job you were applying for? And did it present as a professional view of you as a candidate? So I didn't feedback on those 5 categories alone. In the feedback I've commented on the grammar, presentation, these kind of things. So you're kind of interpreting what my feedback was. So ultimately, what you've been doing is you've been putting together that sheet of notes for yourself that should look something like the thing I've got on the right hand side. So you're looking at style, content, length, suitability, changes to make. So that last one, changes to make, you're just noting down the changes that you needed to make or now need to make on your draft CV. So some of you have already finished that actually, so you're well ahead of the game. But you need to put what changes you needed to make. So, for example, Kayla, I think there was a few bits of underlining or bold type that were inappropriate. So your style was generally good, though there was areas of sort of underlining and bold type that were not great. The content again was generally good, but we made some recommendations regarding just refinements to how to express the work experience that you've gained. There was also some sections that have been left in from a previous template. The length was generally good, I think. I think possibly there was a suggestion we could have made slightly more of education, but the suitability also was fine for the industry that you were working on. So I really just want you to sort of figure I'll create a little bit of notes for every section, um, which is in preparation for a discussion that we have. But first, I need to see your notes. So I need to see that you've done these notes today. So I'll ask again. If anyone is going to struggle to get me that picture of their notes in 5 minutes' time, can they let me know in the chat box now? Otherwise, I'll look forward to receiving all your notes in the next few minutes. Okay, so thank you very much. I'll let you just crack on for the last few seconds and hope to receive them soon.